this so that we have this documented. We are hoping this is a very interactive discussion today, and we want to capture everything. We don't want to miss the discussion points. So with that, Sarah, let's go ahead and share our screen. We do have a presentation prepared to kind of keep us on track today. And the first thing we're going to do is to, and then maximize this. Yep. We're going to go ahead and do roll call. So Andrew, do you want to do the roll call for us, please?
Sure. Katrina Binkowitz, we know she's not here. Deborah Trumbull.
Yes.
Ronnie Hardaway.
Yes.
Becca Lovenheim.
Yes.
Jack Young.
Yep.
Paul Pyrodine. And then from the town, we have CJ Randall.
Yep.
Pat Terrell.
Yes.
Jenna Hollaher.
Yes.
I'm not sure I pronounced your last name correctly.
Okay, it's Holler.
Holler, okay.
Okay.
And then from Place Alliance, we have Ian, Andy,
Everybody.
Jeff, and Sarah.
And
Hello.
from MJ, we have Andrew, our Sarah Stark, and then myself, Jackie. So we have a full house today, and we're very excited about that. Sarah, if you want to go ahead, next slide, please. So here's what we have on tap for today. What we're going to do, I'm going to provide a very brief overview of the schedule, kind of where we are, what we're doing right now, what we have to look forward to in terms of the process and the timing of that. We then, CJ, I'm perfectly fine if we want to do the introduction of the planning board project referral, where this is a slight shift in the agenda, again, to accommodate some committee schedules. And then if we need to get back to that later, we certainly can. We have an overview of existing conditions. We'll talk a little bit about what that is. It's where we are at this point in time in the existing conditions evaluation. Certainly it's not complete at this point, but we wanted to share with you what we did have. And we think that that'll be a solid foundation for what we hope is the bulk of our meeting this evening with you, which is an interactive mapping exercise. And we're pretty excited about trying to do this with this large of a group. And we'll talk about how we're going to do that when we get to that point, hit on some next steps, and then let you get on your way. So Sarah, next slide, please. In terms of the schedule overview, so here we are, believe it or not, we are in December, which is crazy. And so in terms of project tasks, we first met back at the end of October, and since that time, we've been gathering existing data. We have initiated our inventory of existing facilities. We've completed an ADA assessment. We have mobile mapped all of your park facilities. So we have a web-based map of those facilities with 360-degree imagery, which will be important as we move forward in this process during the winter months to be able to think about facilities and placement of those on the sites of, on site. We have initiated, in terms of the public engagement, we've initiated the online community survey, which will help us to analyze needs and trends. We are looking in terms of moving forward with the public engagement. We are in the process of developing that public engagement plan and would be looking toward January and February for the bulk of the public engagement. And we had talked about that at our last committee meeting. And so that would, at this point, it does look like it will need to be a virtual forum for that. And so we will be talking with you at our January meeting about how that's going to be taking shape a little bit more. Okay. And so what we, do we have everybody?
There's
Yep.
Katrina.
There we go. Katrina is joining us now, so good timing for her. So we'll let her come on board. And so once we start with that virtual public forum, we'll start compiling what we have and over a period of several months work to develop the draft plan as it is continuously being informed through public engagement and work with this committee. So that's where we are at this point in time in terms of the schedule. So we're still just getting started, but we've gotten a good start at this point to be able to set a solid foundation to move forward. Next slide, please, Sarah. All right. So with that, I think at this point we can turn it over to CJ. CJ, if you're okay with that, so if you want to move to the next slide, we did throw up a quick map here. The planning board has requested some input from this group with regard to a project that is currently before it. And CJ, I'll turn it over to you at this point in time.
Yeah, sure. And we'll just be brief about this because I'll send some additional materials received from the applicants via email. And if I could just share my screen real quick, I can
go right ahead.
Yep, hold on just a second. Yep.
There you go.
Okay, awesome. Alrighty, let's find our screen here. Okay, so I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the Village Circle Village Solars project over on Warren Road, but this is actually looking east. Most of their maps are positioned to the north, or oriented to the north, I should say. But this was what they originally told the planning board that they were going to build, and it's also what's baked into their zoning. So they're requesting to modify this, and it's not, well, let's just say it's not entirely clear what exactly the alternative it is that they're proposing. So essentially, I wanted to see or get a sense from you what additional information you might need to be able to advise the planning board, what additional maps you might need to be able to make sense of this, and see if you had any specific comments on the essentially the reconfiguring of the trails within this is a planned development area, meaning if you can see my cursor here, it runs along the length of Village Circle and then up to this property line and is bounded by Warren Road to the west and Village Circle South to the south. So yeah, without further ado, if there's any specific questions or comments that the board has, or the committee has, I should say, please let me know. You don't have to have anything. If you don't, that's okay. And if you do, that's great.
So they're just saying this is going to be a little walking trail. What exactly is that amenity that they've got there? I mean, I'm living there right now, and it's, near the building I'm in, it's just a little gravel thing that goes past some dumpsters. It's already there. So, I mean, it didn't look like anything very interesting.
Okay, yeah, and that's somewhat unclear. I sometimes have trouble figuring out what the applicant is actually saying. So this is their, formal requests. Many of the original pathways in the PDA approval can be replaced with internal pedestrian walks and not left without a context of continuity beyond the PDA. The project has progressed in the 6th stage of development. I guess they want to have these internal pattern of walking opportunities. That's a very interesting, I've never heard it described as walking opportunities, but a few additions would cover over 0.55 miles, sufficiently accomplish the internal walking ring. So if this mostly makes sense to you, then this is essentially what the applicant is proposing.
Nobody walks on those little gravel. Nobody walks on any of those.
Yeah.
They walk on the streets.
There should be a perimeter path, definitely.
Right, and this was what was approved.
Yeah,
was this, quote, recreation loop. Okay.
Yeah.
And so my understanding is what's in the PDA is that the amenities loop, the community trail, and the recreation loop should stand unless this body would like to recommend something otherwise to the planning board. But
What I'd like to see,
Oh, sorry, Deborah. We did, I don't know if everyone has seen the comment there in the chat, but Katrina does have a question as well.
okay,
I
yeah.
just want to make sure that's not lost. Go ahead, Deborah. Sorry about that.
what I'd like to see is on their proposed map with all the different colors and everything, how much of the walking in the perimeter is actually on some kind of a trail and how much of it is through parking lots or
Got
along
it,
the
okay.
street.
Okay, how much is formal trail,
Yeah,
aka a walking opportunity?
a walking opportunity. I don't live
Okay.
there, but I drive through occasionally, and I usually see people walking through the parking lots, pushing strollers or with their dogs.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, the applicant had asked me, said, "Oh, you know, could you take some kind of imagery and mark it up?" And I was like, no, I think you'll probably have to do that. So I'll ask them to take some ortho imagery underneath and superimpose the trails on it so we can see. I mean, this is a bit, kind of postmodern art more than perhaps, a trail diagram per se. Not to rag on the applicant, but I'm just not really sure exactly kind of what's happening or being proposed here. So anyway, yeah, Katrina, I didn't see your question. Hold on. Justification.
He's asking what the justification is for this.
Returning to their commentary. If approved, this alternative internal system shown would be completed for Village Solars by the completion of the 2 and 22 rebuilds in August 2022. And they say that many of the original pathways can be replaced with internal walks. I can ask for a more robust justification for this, what I think is a fairly significant waiver from the planned development area. At least that's what it seems to me.
CJ, this is Ronnie.
Yeah. Hey.
I would like to know from them, if it's not in the village, but even if it's in the town, are they going to be a continuous similar surface for these walkways, or are they just is it going to be up to the walker to determine, okay, where does this path go now? If it goes from gravel from asphalt to gravel to dirt to gravel to asphalt and then across the parking lot, something needs to define the actual paths for people to take. For safety purposes, first of all, and if people are going to be pushing strollers or their ADA, they have to have ADA compatibility. The surface needs to be fairly hard, like an asphalt or something. So I would also question, what is their surface going to be for that path, all the paths?
Got it. All right. Yeah, as you can see, there's not much on the justification here. So
yeah, this is Becca. I'm not really sure if this is pertinent necessarily for you to bring back to them, although it does it's what I'm thinking about in terms of the context of this particular meeting as well, which is that I see the plans that they're giving for this walking opportunity. And I think that one of the things that we're looking for too is to see how can we make more opportunities instead of just pinning in this community. Like, there are many people who live there, and like when I look at the maps or think about when I run through there, it is the case that people kind of walk in circles in that area, whereas I would be much more interested in the town looking for ways to connect Village Solars to, say, Springbrook, and then have them be able to get over to Brookhaven and Belvedere. Like, it's true that Farrell and Warren are really busy, but I want us to keep thinking about ways in the town to connect people instead of just making circles.
More than just kind of a circuitous.
But I mean, that's kind of neither here nor there, I guess, in terms of their particular request, but just coming back to the topic we keep revisiting here.
Okay.
Good one.
Okay, so I've got a lot of good feedback for the applicant to be able to send some revisions, and perhaps they can send something a bit more solidified, shall we say, for the next Parks Committee meeting. So I'll follow up with them. And you can feel free to send me stuff by email, and I'll put all of their submittals into a single email to you, so you can just kind of see them at a glance. But again, feel free to just send back comments to me. Okay, great. Thank you very much for letting me barge in with this interlude.
No problem. Thanks, CJ. Thank you, everybody. So we're going to go back and share our screen. All right, if you want to advance, there we go. So next up in our agenda is the existing conditions overview. And so this is what I'm going to call a series of highlights of existing conditions at this point. This is a combination of existing conditions based on different topic areas that we have evaluated here. And Sarah Stark is going to walk through those topic areas. And it's based on data that we have gotten, existing data that we have gotten. So this is not data that has been generated new for this. So if there are things that jump out at you that you might have questions about, certainly let us know. We can go back and confirm things. But we wanted to give you a kind of a snapshot of where we are in our existing conditions evaluation right now. In addition, Andrew's going to walk through just an overview of the facilities at each individual park as part of the existing conditions. We're aware that you are probably very familiar with all of these facilities, but it's important for us to kind of highlight all of this because these discussions about the existing conditions really will help to feed into that interactive exercise that we have planned this evening with you. And so what we will be doing, however, is compiling an existing conditions document. And so that will be a complete document with mapping and analysis, etc. And so that will be something that this committee can be reviewing once we get that pulled together. And so that'll kind of be an interim product, if you will, as we're moving along through this process. But with that, we'd like to share with you some highlights and an overview based on some key topics that we've started to evaluate. So Sarah, if you want to walk through the existing conditions, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you, Jackie. So as she said, the townwide existing conditions inventory, it really just gives us a greater understanding of what's going on in the town, where people are living, where they're recreating, how they're getting to these different places, and also what some of the environmental constraints might be. So some of the areas that we'll be highlighting today include land use, zoning, transportation, environmental and natural resources, parks and recreation, including the individual parks in the town, as well as regional recreation. So just to orient you, we've included a map here. Hold on,
you can bring that down to the bottom. Too.
Yeah.
Just pull it down. There you go.
There we go.
There you
okay.
go. Yeah.
So we've mapped the town boundary here in red. You can see the town hall as a star in the center, Cayuga Lake over on the west side of the town. And we've pointed out a couple of the main parks in the area, like Salt Point, Lansing Center Trail, the town barn, and town ball fields. And then the village of Lansing is down at the bottom here. So one of the first things that we look at is land use. This data tells us where the primary pockets are of residential, agriculture, commercial within the town. So the data mapped here are actually based on the town assessed land use. So these are itemized here. Agriculture is in brown, mixed use in pink. What struck us is that the predominant land use in this area is agricultural. It's representing 39% of the land area in the town. So that's in brown here, and it's primarily located in the northern region of the town. So the next largest land use is low density residential. So that's shown here in this very light yellow color. And that represents about 31% of the land area within the town. And it's primarily congregated around the Cayuga Lake Cliffs, as well as near the area near Town Hall. The third largest land use is vacant land, which accounts for about 18% of the land use in the town. So that's shown in tan. So the primary pockets of that seem to be in the northern region along the shore of Cayuga Lake and also scattered throughout the town. The remaining land uses, including commercial, parks and recreation, industrial, mixed use, all account for less than 3% of the land use total. And again, here's Town Hall. In fact, here, bear with me here. I'm going to turn on something that's going to make it a little easier for you to see where I'm pointing. There you go. Here you go. Yep, so Town Hall here. So moving on to zoning. So what zoning tells us is what the allowable land uses are in the area. Knowing the zoning can help us understand what can be developed. And that can help determine where future recreational opportunities might be and where those future connections may go. The predominant zoning district in Lansing is the Rural Agricultural District, accounting for about 70% of the land area. So that's shown here in brown. And that zoning district is only in the northern part of the town. The next largest zoning district is made up of a mix of residential and mixed use districts, including moderate density residential, mixed use, and the Lakeshore District, right along here. It's also important to note that all town parks are within the Lakeshore residential or mixed use zoning districts. Moving on to transportation. So here we're examining how people are navigating the town. What are the primary routes, and are they in proximity to some of the recreational resources? So the primary routes within the town include State Route 34B, which runs here, east-west and then north, and State Route 34, which runs north-south. Again, Town Hall is in the center here. What we notice too is that all of the town parks and recreational opportunities are within a half-mile distance to these main routes. Another transportation opportunity within the town is public transportation through Tompkins County Consolidated Area Transit. We understand that there's a bus stop at Town Hall, and we're working on getting the bus route data to get that mapped as well.
And so I do want to point out that this transportation is primarily vehicular at this point, yes. Right? So that's what we're looking at here. And as part of our work with you would be looking at what other modes might we be able to create connections for, and are these corridors appropriate for sharing, Deborah, you're laughing out loud. But those are some of the things we want to talk about with you as we move forward in this process.
Thank you. So moving on to environmental resources. Many of the key natural resources within the town of Lansing are centered around the water. So this includes Cayuga Lake, Salmon Creek, which runs down through the town and exits between Myers Park and Salt Point Preserve. There's also, of course, Salt Point Preserve, a few unique natural areas, including some areas along the Cayuga Lake Cliffs, up near the Ludlow Woods, near the Ludlow Park, as well as wetlands scattered throughout the town. So the wetlands are shown here in this light green. Next up is steep slopes. So steep slopes are areas of land grade that are greater than 15%. So these may identify areas of potential erosion. So steep slopes account for about 9% of the land use, or the land area within the town. So that's primarily located in the lake cliffs here, as well as along Salmon Creek and along the Cayuga Lake shoreline here. Wetlands account for another 6% of the land area. And there are also flood zones in the town, which border Cayuga Lake as well as Salmon Creek. Forgive me, we lost CJ for a moment there.
I think she had to go get the zoning board all logged in and signed up for their virtual meeting this evening.
Sure.
Great. CJ, are you back with us?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, so next, of course, we looked at parks and recreation. So we looked at some of the recreational opportunities within the town, and we've called out some of those key resources in the map here. There are nearly 700 acres of recreational and conserved land within the town. So we've mapped conserved land here in blue, and that accounts for roughly 175 acres within the town. And when we talk about conserved land, what we're talking about is areas where the land cannot be developed. So it's also important to note that this conserved land that's been mapped includes both public and private properties. For instance, the Edwards Lake Cliff Preserve does have a public trail. However, the Lansing Rod and Gun Club, located just north of Ludlowville Park, is a private conserved parcel. In addition to the parks and recreation, of course, we also have the town parks, such as Salt Point, Myers Park, Lansing Center Trail here, the town ball fields, also the Emily Jonas Falls Trail, just down here. And then we've also mapped some of the indoor recreational opportunities, such as the ice rink, the community ice rink. There are also 7 miles of trails within the town. That includes, of course, the Lansing Center Trail, the trails around Salt Point, the trails throughout the Edwards Lake Cliff Preserve, as well as the Emily Jonas Falls Trail. And with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague Andrew to walk you through the existing conditions within the town parks.
Thank you.
The literal handoff of the mouse.
The handoff of the mouse. It's a new world we're living in.
Yes.
Great. So that was sort of a general overview of the town-wide existing conditions. So we're just going to dive a little bit deeper into the individual parks. So the first one we're starting with, there we go, Myers Park. So Myers Park is the one of the most popular, one of the most visited parks in the park system. It is a 29-acre park right along Cayuga Lake. This has a really robust offering of parks and recreational facilities, the most facilities of all the parks in the system. So this includes RV camping areas, pavilions, access to the lake, both in terms of active play in the swim area, but also through the boat launch and the marina. It includes playgrounds, and some active recreational opportunities in the basketball court, the soccer field, those sorts of things. So this is just this is a facilities map of the park. Some things that stood out to us in our initial observations. First, it's a really well-maintained park. It's a very popular park. Most of the activity centers or the active parts of the park and the facilities are more concentrated toward the waterfront itself. Some potential opportunities, challenges that we observed. The traffic pattern tends to prioritize vehicular traffic a bit more than pedestrians. And there's also we see a potential opportunity here to better utilize the space, to create more defined activity areas, that sort of thing here. So moving on to the Salt Point Preserve, this is located just adjacent to Myers Park on the other side of the Salmon Creek. This is a real hidden gem here, a really great opportunity for recreation, but this is geared more toward the passive recreation as it is a preserve. It's a 34-acre natural area.
Can you check and see if we lost somebody up above? Oh, it's the chat. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just the chat.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Okay. Okay, Great. So,
Excellent.
yeah, thank you, Jack. We just got a comment from Jack about the local soccer facility. So great. We'll make sure to get those mapped.
Yep.
Deborah, did you have a question?
I did. One of the activities you don't put down for Salt Point is duck hunting and deer hunting.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Wow.
hunting is allowed in the preserve.
Hunting
Okay.
is allowed because it's owned
By
by the
DEC.
Department of Environmental Conservation,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great.
Wow.
Yep. Okay.
which makes it very exciting to walk down there and duck and deer.
I'm sure.
You
Wear your
have
bright colors.
Yeah. This time of year for sure.
Yes. So
Surprised.
Okay.
yeah, no. So thank you. And that brings me to my next point that this land is owned by New York State and leased by the town. Because this is geared more toward the passive recreation, there are fewer facilities here. So facilities here include a canoe and kayak launch, which is great for lakefront access, as well as the Salt Point Trail, 1 mile trail for bicyclists and pedestrians, as well as the parking area. It's another facility here. From an environmental perspective, this is within the 100-year flood zone, as is Myers Park. So that kind of creates a challenge and something to consider moving forward as well. And there are also wetlands present on this site. One of the key features of Salt Point is the active osprey nesting sites, and that's a real attraction for birders and people who are looking to experience nature. So this is just an overview map of Salt Point. Some potential opportunities here include opportunities to improve trails, enhance the park with more interpretive and educational signage, perhaps moving toward a more accessible trail from an ADA perspective. So next, moving on to Ludlowville Park. This is a smaller park, more of a neighborhood type park. It's approximately 13 acres right on Salmon Creek. The real focal point here is the Salmon Creek Falls. That really makes this park a destination that draws people in. And the current, from an environmental perspective, there are some areas of steep slopes as well as some flood zones present. In terms of facilities, most of the facilities here are concentrated in that lower southern portion of the property below Salmon Creek. And so some of the key facilities here include a gazebo, basketball court, playground, and pavilion. This is a smaller scale park than Myers and sort of serves that neighborhood need. Some potential opportunities here, include enhancing the neighborhood connections for bicyclists and pedestrians, potential opportunity to improve the parking area, and also enhance the gateway signage coming into the park. Moving on, we have the Lansing Center Trail. This trail offers over 4 miles of trails, and there are different options to choose within the trail system there. And again, this is primarily a passive recreation area. So the only real facility here is the parking area, but it does support a range of activities for all seasons. Again, this is just an overview of the trail and the parking area down in the lower portion of the property. Next is the town ball field. This is a really great facility and a really great asset to the community, a very well used asset in the community. So the total property here, and this is next to the town hall, is 18 acres. The existing facilities include 9 ball fields, which is really substantial. That's really wonderful. Soccer field, batting cages, as well as playgrounds, a pavilion, basketball court. And this park is really geared toward the organized active play, as opposed to some of the more passive recreation opportunities in the other parks. This is a very well maintained park and clearly well used by the community. Some physical challenges here might include better connections, pedestrian connections to the various neighborhoods surrounding this area, and also a potential demand for space since it is such a popular location. And again, here is an overview of the facilities. And lastly, we have the town barn field facility. So this is located directly behind the town barn where the town highway department is located. Again, this is a very well-maintained multi-use field. The facilities include 3 ball fields and a soccer field. Some potential challenges here, include shared parking with the highway department, at times where demand might be high, as well as better connections to neighborhoods. So that is sort of a very high level overview of the individual parks themselves. I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah to talk about some of the regional recreational opportunities.
And before Sarah jumps in, I know that folks have been submitting some comments in the chat, and that's great. So if you can just hold on a second, we'll get through the regional recreation, and then we do want to hear your input, some things that we need to continue to map and be thinking about from an existing conditions perspective. So we'll pause as soon as Sarah gets done walking through the regional recreation piece. Sure. Great. Hand over
the passing of the mouse. All right. Well, thank you. So in addition to looking at some of the local recreational opportunities, it's important to understand what's happening from a regional perspective. So these local parks exist within the context of a larger recreational network. So here we've mapped many of the public parks, both state, county, municipal parks, as well as some of the larger trail networks. What struck me is the volume of regional and municipal parks and recreational opportunities in the area. You have Tehanic Falls State Park, Buttermilk Falls State Park, the Robert Treeman State Park, which honestly is one of my favorites. And you also have Watkins Glen to the west here. In addition to that, there are a multitude of different trails in the area, and we've mapped some of the larger ones here just to try to keep it at a higher level. But there's the Finger Lakes Trail, which is a 72-mile trail running from Dryden all the way to the Connecticut Hill Preserve. In addition, the Cayuga Trail here in pink, the Black Diamond Trail, which is here in blue, running from Cass Park to Tehanic Falls State Park, as well as the Dryden Rail Trail, which is 7 miles. These are fantastic resources for people in the area. So here's a larger view of that, showing the Finger Lakes National Forest over here. Now, while we have mapped the public opportunities, we do understand that there are some private and nonprofit recreational opportunities, and we're working on gathering that data and getting that mapped as well. We understand particularly Cornell owns quite a bit of preserved land in this area, and here very, very close proximity to the town of Lansing. And with that, I will, unless there's any questions.
So yeah, that kind of is a quick snapshot, a highlight, if you will, of where we are in terms of existing conditions. Certainly, this is not done yet. And one of the things that we do find, even though we will be pulling together a document of existing conditions, the existing conditions piece continues throughout the duration of the process. As we continue to learn more, not only from you and the public, we continue to update that. But I don't see them now. Can you check and see if the chat items are up? So I do know there were some things coming in on the chat. Thank you. There we go. All right, so the hunting, the segment to Little Free Library. Okay, this is all great. Okay, as well as the local soccer facilities. So these are all great, great feedback. Anything else that kind of popped out at you that we should be making sure that we are documenting and tracking down the data? I know this is a very quick snapshot for you, and but if there's anything that jumps out at you immediately, we'd love to hear that. All right, hearing nothing right now. If something does come to mind, please let us know. And it might, as we move into this next segment of our meeting today. Sarah, if you want to do next slide, please, that'd be great. Next slide. And so in terms of our interactive exercise today, so I must confess that we have not done this with this large of a group. We've done this internally, and it's been very useful. So we are excited to be working with you on this as part of the larger group to be able to work through this. But what we have on tap for you, we want to be walking through and learning from you as if we were able to unroll a map on a large table and circle around the map, and with markers, just start marking it up. We recognize we can't do that. So we're going to do it a little bit differently this evening, and I'll explain how. But we really want to understand key destinations from a regional perspective, from a townwide perspective, and then we're going to get down into the individual park discussion. But we want to understand key destinations, whether it's recreational destinations from a regional perspective. Why are why are people attracted to these destinations? What what programs or facilities are offered there? And what niche do they serve from a regional perspective versus a townwide perspective? And we also want to know what destinations, non-recreational destinations are out there. Where are people congregating, and are there opportunities to make connections to recreational destinations, within the town and or regionally. And we had really started to focus on those connections as part of the discussion at our first meeting together. And so we wanted to be able to continue that discussion with you this evening. And then ultimately discuss facilities, what is needed from a recreational and park facility standpoint. And this really will get probably more specific in terms of townwide and individual parks. We're going to see how far we get this evening. If we need to pick it up again at our next meeting, we certainly will. But Sarah, if you can go to the next slide. What we're hoping to be able to do, we're going to kind of walk through a quick little how-to session here. And yeah, if you can pull that up to the side, that'll be great. There you go. We're just rearranging our window here a little bit. So what we are going to do, we're going to close out of this PowerPoint presentation and bring up a series of maps. So the first map we're going to have is going to be a regional map. It'll be that regional map that Sarah just ended up with. And so we're going to start at the broad level, and then as we work through our conversation with you, get to the town-wide level, and then get to the individual park level. And so what we're going to ask you to do is to kind of take controls here and using the annotate button on Zoom, work with us to identify, again, those destinations, those key connections, and any facilities that jump out at you. So within your, if you want to open up the annotation, if you want to open it, yeah. All right, so Sarah's going to open up the annotation so that you should have that on your screen now. But basically what you can do is hopefully you can see a toolbar on your screen, and it should have a variety of options. And we're looking at two different options that we think will be the easiest to be able to utilize here. The first is the draw tool. And so you can draw a line. This would be for the connections discussion. Right on the map, you can draw a line. And then also the stamp tool. And so what we are recommending is if you can use the star option of the stamp. If you want to use a heart, that's fine too. A destination you love, that's totally fine. And what we're going to do, we're going to ask you to be able to do this and share with us your thoughts on the map. We will be saving that information that you are documenting on the map, and so we have that that we can go back to, and we can actually map that once we have this. All right. So I'm going to pause right there and see if there are any questions about what we're going to be doing moving forward for the next several minutes. Okay. All right, Sarah.
I should also mention that if you're using a mobile device like a phone or an iPad, it probably won't work. It really only works if you're on a computer.
Yeah. So Paul, you might have to tell us where you want us to put your star down.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and switch gears here. And we do have our team members from Place Alliance joining us as well, who will also be jumping in to help facilitate this. All right. So hopefully you are seeing the regional map, which is a little hard to see here.
And just to let you know, when you do annotate the map, it's not going to keep that scale if we zoom in or zoom out or go to a different area. So you will see me periodically clear the drawing, and if we want to zoom in or pan to a different area, so it doesn't get too cluttered. But rest assured, we will be saving anything that you mark up.
We can just leave that right open. Sure. Great. All right. So from a regional perspective, you know, some of the things that would be helpful for us to know, and I think to start the conversation, you know, where do you guys go? What are your destinations with regard to you know, regional recreational facilities, and where are you going and why? Like, what's attracting you there? So we'll start with that, and if anyone wants to try to be the first one to try and annotate and put a stamp where you typically go, let's see if we can try this out, see if this works. Oh, okay. All right, Watkins Glen State Park. All right. Paul, was that you?
I think that was Pat.
Oh, that was Pat. Okay. All right, where else are you guys going? Katrina is going to, I can't see that far. That's Fillmore Glen. Okay. I need to get my eyes checked. I'm sitting too far away from the screen. Go ahead, Sarah, if you can see those. Yeah. So Hammond Hill State Forest, yeah, if you can see them better than I can.
Yep. Lodi Point. Long Point State Park. Robert Treman State Park. It's a good one. Tehanic Falls, Buttermilk Falls, Stewart Park. I'm not familiar with that area. Okay. Hammond Hill State Forest.
All right, so what is attracting you guys to these key regional recreation areas?
Natural beauty.
Okay, okay.
Good
Mushrooms.
hiking.
Walking the dogs,
Okay.
always.
Walking my mom.
Okay.
I'm an iPad, so I'm not going to be able to mark this up. But yeah, it's what everyone said in terms of hiking, and then also just speaking from like the school perspective, like the actual fitness and education aspects of all of these places are really important.
Okay.
And how often are you kind of going outside of the community for recreation? Is it, you know, monthly, weekly?
these days weekly.
Yeah.
Understandable. Oh, and if I could just, what is this area here? We don't have that one mapped. I believe Katrina put a stamp here. You can see my little mouse.
That might have been an accident.
Okay.
Let me find my eraser.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. All right. Any other regional locations? All right. Pat just marked something over in Groton.
Is that
I
the
would
ice
also
cream
say
place, Pat?
Watkins Glen is another area that we head to.
Oh, yeah.
So the southern tip of Seneca.
Okay. So let me ask this, in terms of distance away, what's about the average, drive time, if you will, that you're willing to go to get to these places of natural beauty with the hiking and, good dog walking opportunities? What's that time frame from a travel distance that you're willing to do? Is it 30 minutes?
30.
30 to 45. I think everything Katrina has said so far I've agreed with. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Playgrounds, water. Okay, great. And thanks everyone. We are getting the chats. You can, I think, fold it down into the
35, 40 minutes,
Yep.
an hour.
Great. Okay.
Excellent.
Less than an hour for leisure.
Yes.
You can
Mark it.
park it way over to the right and it'll fold
Just
in.
minimize it.
She wants.
Yeah, I'd like to have that open so we can see. You can. Yep. Great. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, we're just reorganizing our internal screen here, guys, so you can see everything. Great. All right. So let's go ahead and save this, Sarah, before we lose this information.
Satellite reception.
Okay.
This is great information.
All right. So let's take it the next level down, if you will, and we're going to go to the town-wide at this point. All right. So from a town, yep, let's annotate.
Yeah, I'm going to drag this up a bit so we can see.
All right. So from a town-wide perspective, and one of the things that's helpful for us to understand and why we were asking what was attracting you to those regional recreational opportunities is part of what we want to be understanding as we work through this with you is, what recreational facilities, parks, and programming should the town be focused on, recognizing resources are limited and you do have a pretty substantial park system. Moving forward, where should Pat and Jenna and their team be focusing their time and energy on new facilities, upgrades, programming, that sort of thing, and understanding what programs and facilities already exist that are accessible generally to your residents and your community, and where can the town fill gaps or a niche and maybe not duplicate efforts, or maybe it is because of the location, those things are still important. So we're trying to understand that, just getting started here with you. And so from a town-wide perspective, we'd like to ask the same question, and this might be a little broader in terms of destinations beyond just recreational facilities, but what are some of the key destinations here in town? We have on this map, and Sarah, if you want to be able to to kind of highlight a little bit, added some of what we would call community facilities on the map. So, you know, the fire stations, the town halls, schools, that sort of thing, to help orient folks a little bit. But Sarah, if you want to just kind of just highlight a little bit what folks are looking at, and then if you guys want to go ahead and start, you know, stamping your destinations on here, feel free while we're talking through this.
Sure. So we've mapped all of the parks, recreation, and conserved land in green. We've also mapped where the schools are, the fire stations here and here. We've also mapped, there's the town gravel pit up at the top here. Sorry, I can actually move this map up just a little bit if we need. There's also the town hall as well as the historic site next to the town hall.
Great, and thank you folks. You're already, it looks like a lot of folks enjoy Ludlowville Park.
Where's the gravel pit on this map?
It's a little further north, so if I'm going to pan the map, I'm just going to go ahead and.
Nope. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Pat, I love it. Pat loves the waterfront.
Tell us how you really feel.
So I'm just
that would be the railroad bed.
The railroad.
yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I think you can just.
I can't access that without seeing how
Moving everything.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you can see, the gravel pit is right up there.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yep. It's just off the. Just off the map. So yeah, if we can move it back.
No problem. So
Thank
we're
you.
gonna just slide
All
back
right.
down.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right. Oh, we lost Becca, so we're gonna let her back in.
There we go.
All right, Sarah. So yeah, we'll go back to annotate. Okay. All right. So Pat, I think you like the waterfront. And it is a wonderful resource that you have in the town, and a pretty substantial amount of waterfront in the town, certainly.
Is this
It's just-
indicating a potential trail network along where the railroad tracks are, or?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. What's the, are those active? We were having an internal conversation. I know Andy and Sarah, Place Alliance, you guys have taken a little dive into that. Pat, what's the status of those rail tracks right now?
They're still being used somewhat for salt from Cargill, but I don't believe they're being used for anything north of Cargill much.
Oh, yeah. They bring the salt cars up past Salt Point.
Yeah, but I don't think they go much farther than that.
No, they don't.
They just use that area to switch the engines.
Yeah.
So a little background, it was originally used for coal cars to go to the power plant. So that's why it goes all the way up there.
Okay.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh, that does make sense.
So this area up here is no longer utilized regularly?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. So does it stop right around here or a little further north?
Right around where you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and put a little note here for us.
Yeah, that's great.
There
Okay.
we go. All right.
Thank
Thank you.
Has there been lots of talk of converting that, to a rail trail, Pat?
It's been discussed a lot more recently.
Yeah, the power plant was mothballed in October of last year. So they've just gone offline. So
It's been a wish list of the average person in Lansing for quite a while.
And who owns the rail right of way?
Norfolk Southern.
It is Norfolk Southern? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, with Watco as their holding company.
Okay. Okay. So there you go, Andy Bone from Place Alliance. Mystery solved.
We had also talked about a trail going up to Bower Road, which
There you go.
includes connection to the state facilities.
Yes.
And that was Bower Road, Katrina?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Is there any way to zoom in on the map just a little bit more?
Yes. So I'm just gonna go ahead and save this, and then I'm gonna clear it so we can zoom in a little bit. Unfortunately, I have to exit from this in order to zoom.
So Pat, where would you like us to zoom into?
Can you zoom closer to the town ball fields?
Absolutely. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, so I'm going to turn annotation back on so you can mark that up.
All right. So one of the things that I know we had initiated, the conversation that had been initiated at our last meeting was really about connections. And so understanding connections, you know, are we looking at connections between neighborhoods and the recreational facilities? Are we looking at connections between your recreational facilities? You know, help us understand that a little bit. You know, are there other destinations beyond your parks and recreational facilities that you feel should be connected to? What are your thoughts about that?
So
Okay.
as the cross country and long distance track coach and a local runner, I would love to see, I mean, like the ideal would be to see some connection between the Lansing schools and each of the places that we're looking at right now. So we obviously can run on the roads to Ludlowville and Myers, although right now it's terrifying, but you could go from Lansing schools to the Lansing Center Trail and or ball fields. You know, having something that was not just a pedestrian walkway, but I think, and this was something I was talking to actually some runners about today of high school age, was being able to ride a bike safely to all of these different places would be awesome. And I think we have a lot of cyclists, especially when you mention things like the Black Diamond Trail on the other side of the lake, the waterfront trail. Right now, when we have races that go around Seneca, or when we have people who are cycling around Cayuga and Seneca for that matter, but when they go around Cayuga, we're all on roads in this area. It would be really cool to see people being able to get off of that cycling route and be in our community, because we actually have all of these great connections. And then when I think about like Salmon Creek Road down by Ludlowville, that's another cycling destination that people are going to. But if there were ways that we could just, again, keep connecting people instead of having them be separate, separate destinations.
Okay. And so Becca, when you're talking about this, and internally we had a conversation about this last week. So Ian, feel free to jump in as well. But when you're talking about those connections, you know, what our thought is, particularly along some of these roadways, it lends itself perhaps more to a separate multi-use path versus, you know, a wide shared roadway, wide shoulder, you know, for shared bicycling opportunity. But we wanted to get a little sense from you. You know, some of these roadways, they do seem a little open, and where cars might be going fairly quickly. And so for somebody that might be a recreational cyclist, may not feel as comfortable, you know, riding with traffic in some of these, on some of these roadways. Open for some ideas of what your thoughts are in terms of, you know, separate paths, separate multi-use path along some, to make some of these connections happen. You know, what are your thoughts?
I would agree with that. You know, I think last meeting we talked some about like pocket parks and like being able to connect neighborhoods, and if there were some possibility for a path that could do that, I think that would be great. I'm hearing from families that I work with that, you know, when we encourage people to be active, especially during this last time, go outdoors. There are definitely many neighborhoods. Some people are doing, I'm not very good at this annotating, so I'm just going to talk instead. But, you just get stuck because a lot of our roads that go through Lansing are highways and there's not much we can do. And the shoulders might be wide, but you're risking life and limb if you decide to head out on them. So I do think the option of having some separate pathways makes sense. There are certainly some natural paths that have already begun, but they have a beginning and an end, and they're not necessarily, they just need to be connected. So yeah, definitely something on that.
I think following up on that, there are a lot of neighborhoods that are just dead ends. You can't get out of them, and some of them, the streets are wide. They're kind of even unsafe to bike or walk through the neighborhood. So it could be something that would require a great deal of finesse of finding out ways to get rights of way across property that's already being used. It's not going to be easy.
You're right, Deborah. Might not be easy, but I think part of the task before us as looking comprehensively at a master plan for your parks, recreation, and trail system is to, identify what the vision is and opportunities for that, and then to map out what those next steps might be to get you closer to that. And if there is this vision, when CJ's working with the planning board and a project comes before you, the planning board, you can understand as a community how what's being proposed fits into that broader, longer term vision, and incrementally can slowly start to address that.
Yeah.
There are also some pots of money too, and the town can get creative with some, financing of acquisition. People don't necessarily, some people are holdouts, they, sometimes want compensation for their routes, which can be reasonable, or, for their right to access their land. But there are pots of money to help with that, which is why the plan is so important in my humble estimation.
Another random thought that just came to my mind, but I had mentioned I had meant to email you about earlier, Jackie, but something to think about is we have several preschools as well in Lansing. And I know that that might be another interesting spot to think about where to connect, where to have pocket parks nearby or playgrounds or beginnings of pathways. So the reason I think about that is we look at Robin's Nest, which is closer to the village, and then you have Sweet Peas, and then you have the drop-in center at the town ball fields. Those are also all near areas where we have scouting troops tend to meet, and then they might use these facilities a lot. And when I think about scouting, it makes me think about these bike trips and groups that would then, want to have all of these connections, but you're also looking at a larger community investment at that point in terms of wanting to help mobilize change.
Okay, great. And Pat, it looks like you've made a lot of potential connections, or put a lot of potential connections here. This is great. Thank you.
Jackie, can I jump in for 1 second?
Please, Ian. Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that, this of course, as I think Deborah and Becca both this part that we're doing right now, this the big idea of connectivity. Unfortunately, this is the easy part. And where we just get to draw a line on a map and from point A to point B of where we want it to go. But it's also where it has to start. There's no way around it. So this first step will allow us to take the next step, which is just to start to zoom in and look at those things, look at right-of-ways to see, are there excessive shoulders that potentially there's opportunities to reduce to create, separate path systems. To Jackie's point earlier, I kind of been talking about this for a long time now. Basically on road shared systems, sometimes you can't avoid it. But when you can avoid it, you should, because when you do that, you're really designing to about 6%. So you got to keep that in mind. You have the 1%ers who are the bike enthusiasts or road runners that they're going to do it no matter what because it's such a part of their life. And then you have the 5%ers who are reluctant, but they are so committed that they'll still do it even though it worries them. And then you have everybody else who won't do it. And so when you're talking about spending resources or thinking about connections, you got to understand that really the way to make connections that people will actually use, they've got to be separated. Because when they're on the road, obviously through neighborhoods and things like that, it could be different. But when you're talking about actual roadways, just got to keep in mind of who's actually going to be using it, and it gets really limited. So I think the key is like start with the big picture like this, start to zoom in, identify opportunities, identify where your gaps are, and then come back together and then start to have, conversations about how we can problem solve and figure out where we have opportunities. And then potential, as Jackie was saying, and I think someone from the committee last time was talking about, potential development pressure areas where we can ensure that some of those gaps can be closed within that new development, or gives us opportunities to close some gaps. So just wanted to mention that.
Ian, can you expand a little bit on what you mean when you say separated? Because I think there's, the idea or notion of like, well, we'll put up, a simple barrier, and that's separated, but I think you're talking about something different.
Yeah, I mean, the way you get to the most usability is to have a truly separated, meaning some kind of physical landscape buffer between between the moving traffic and the multi-use path. So, and I guess you get into a zone of doing the best you can. But the more separated and the more safe people feel, the more it's going to be used. Of course, there's degrees, and sometimes you get to pinch points, and you've got to, have a short section where it's shared, or a short section where it's you come up with some other way to make it feel as safe as possible. But that's kind of the name of the game of getting the usability percentage increased.
All right. Other thoughts, comments at this point? And please recognize this is not the last time we'll be having these conversations. This is the starting point for these. But any other thoughts, comments, things you wanted to identify here?
I guess when I think about pinch points, I just keep thinking about how often we've wanted a crosswalk across 34 at various locations. And I think some of these things in terms of like stuff that's going to be upcoming when we look at connectivity is things like near the schools and near the trails, and maybe even along, trip hammer at different places. Those are roads that it's complicated if you want to be able to have people cross over that stuff. But there are some places, having crosswalks in some of those areas, I think are high priorities for the community and would be an indicator of, what it means to be connected, because who cares if it's on the other side of a terrifying road.
That would be another great thing, either to annotate in this exercise or to, to revisit, or have the committee just send the team kind of those key locations where we've got to figure out how to do safe crossings. Yeah, that would be super helpful.
And that's a long stay. Like those have been ongoing. I mean, some of the people on this committee know more about this than I do, but crossover at, towards to Myers Road, and then the cross has been the long-standing request. But then also across from the, if we're going to connect the trails and the ball fields, those are the two areas that, have been big ones.
So oh, go ahead.
When you're talking about crosswalk, Becca, are you talking about a light? A traffic light? Or?
So, I mean, I know a traffic light was talked about at the ball fields and the apartments.
Yeah.
I know, I mean, I don't actually know, I shouldn't go into the history because more people know about that. The thing I know the most about in terms of what people want is if we're going to have school children walking back and forth across 34 to Myers Park, there should be a crosswalk, and ideally whatever lighting we need to make that safe. And then now we obviously have an apartment complex, and we have trails, and we have ball fields, and they're on opposite sides of the road up at the town center. And there's no crosswalk. And a TCAT bus on one side, and apartments on the other side.
There's stripes.
There's stripes.
They're just getting ready to put the crosswalk in across 34 at the, but they just need to reposition the bus shelter. But DOT has approved the walk across there. It's going to be installed this spring. Yep.
CJ, it's a mid-block unlit crossing.
Yeah, it's I could see if I can bring up the drawings for it, but yeah, it's essentially just a mid-block crossing that's striped across that connects Town Hall and the TCAT bus stop with the trail system across to Lansing Town Center trails.
2 of those, correct? One upper and one lower.
Google map. Yeah, I think once we get to the town barnfield maps, I can bring up the town.
There's just
Sorry, Pat,
one.
where was that? So there's 2. Can we just bring up a Google Maps? I think we're gonna. Yeah. So Pat, there were 2 there. See if you want to stop sharing. Yeah.
I thought there was going to be 2, one lower by the TCAT bus shelter and then another one on the upper east side where the sidewalk comes to the road.
They won't let them. They won't let them cross at hold on.
At Woods Edge.
Do a screen share here. Yeah, the DOT approved this. So
okay, great.
Let me just zoom in on this one here. Okay, so yes. DOT approved, yeah, absolutely. So DOT approved this, and then this is where the shelter is. It's not shown here because it didn't exist at the time. But they did not like this. They did not like the sight lines. Although it remains to be seen whether that would be added in once the traffic impact study for the town center area is done. So we'll see. They may, decide to put some kind of signalized intersection there. It's hard to say. We'll wait to see what SRF has
Yeah,
to say.
I thought they were painting both.
I don't think DOT approved the one at Woods Edge to Louise Bement.
You mean the one that Pat just painted?
Yeah, I just did it. No.
Oh, well,
no. Not yet.
Gotcha.
Pretty decent alternative, like if they don't go all the way to, a controlled stop signal of just having flashing pedestrian crossing lights that, can be triggered at the crosswalk. For kind of a high-speed section, that's a pretty decent alternative. Obviously a lot less costly and maybe, easier to get approved from DOT.
So one thing I think we might offer to do is we can share some PDFs of this base mapping with you, and if you guys want to take the opportunity to mark it up in PDF, or if it triggers thoughts and ideas, you can send an email to us. I think all of that will be helpful to have And, you know, like, this is great, recognizing that there are, you know, there's been a desire to have additional crossings, and there's one that's being put into place. I think all really important information for us to understand, particularly as we move forward and get more familiar with the existing conditions here. I do want to, I'm just checking with the time, and do want to be cognizant of everybody's time at this point, and we're coming up to our hour and a half time frame, and I want to put it to the committee. We have not yet had a chance to dive into the individual park facilities and really talk about each of those parks. And that is something we want to do, but I want to make sure that we have enough time to be able to do that. And I don't think that getting through that in the next 5 minutes is feasible. And so what we would suggest is perhaps we can table that to our next discussion. But in the meantime, between now and then, perhaps we can have some activities that we can share with you, and perhaps via email we can have some additional interaction about the individual park facilities. We're certainly open for some suggestions. Ian, I don't know if you have other suggestions about how we might be able to kind of, I want to make sure that we have sufficient time to talk through the individual parks and talk about the physical facilities at the parks and the layout of the parks, but open to some suggestions from the committee moving forward. And Ian, if you have some thoughts about that as well.
One other thing I want before we move off of the connectivity things, I think Andy had brought up a pretty interesting point that this group would know better than us at this point. You know, you see on the map, you see a lot of horizontal blue water systems, hydrology lines. You know, sometimes those can be really solid corridors that can help link things. You know, it might not be feasible. Obviously, it's going through a lot of private property. And the other thing I would say about that is sometimes private property can be obviously a big hindrance, but it also can be a big opportunity if you have large agricultural landowners that, you know, if you have some that would potentially be friendly to this cause. We've had several projects where that's been the key way to make the connections. A lot of times these farm fields, they naturally have farm roads that surround their fields on the perimeters. They run into natural waterways like you're seeing there, and that's a natural boundary for their fields and those farm roads. There's a project that we did just a couple of years ago in Schoharie, New York, where we've probably worked with 3 different farmers, real large landowners, and you know, they're going to have about a 3-mile trail connection that essentially connects along the Schoharie Creek and all the way connects into the core of their hamlet, because of those 3 willing farmers to, you know, have a 20-foot easement utilizing an ag road bed that was already there. So that's the kind of out of the box thinking that to close these gaps that pretty much you have to do when you're wanting to be as ambitious from a connectivity standpoint as I think you guys are.
Thanks, Ian. Great. So with that thought, keep that in mind when we, you know, we send some maps to you to be able to mark up and continue to think about. So CJ, Pat, I would look to you guys. Are you okay if we table the individual park facilities discussions to our next meeting?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I will say this was really helpful. We were kind of teasing around the edges of this type of a discussion at our first meeting, but we had a lot of other more administrative type of things to get through. So we really wanted to get here with you this evening, recognizing, as I said, it's a start. And so in terms of next steps, Sarah, if you want to float back to next steps, one of the things that we will do this week, again, is we will share with you the some of this mapping that you can mark up. And, you know, please share your ideas with us, shoot us some emails. I know some of you have been doing that, and we really appreciate that, and we're documenting all of that. If you're out and about, you know, Becca, you're on a run and you're having conversations with folks about what they're looking for, please help share that with us. That's, you know, that's really helpful for us. So we will be doing that for you this week. We'll get that information to you so that you can be able to, you know, start sharing your thoughts back with us. We will prepare a summary of this evening's discussion, and we'll try to do some preliminary kind of just general mapping as a result of our conversations, just to document it for our internal purposes. As I mentioned earlier, we will be finalizing the public engagement plan, and we will have that for you to take a look at over the next couple of weeks, so that we can be thinking about and planning for that public engagement early next year, as we had talked about. The community survey, I jotted the number down. I think we are at, Andrew, where were we?
I think it's 438.
430 something.
430 something.
Yeah, 430 plus responses to date for the survey, which is great. I really want to thank everybody for helping to promote that. It does close on December 18th, so next Friday. So we really want to push that. Becca, I want to, you know, thank you in particular. I know that you worked with the school to be able to help share this, and we did see a bump in the response rate shortly after that. So that was successful. Thank you for that. And we're really looking forward to getting that feedback. And that will help us, along with our discussions with you, shape that virtual public forum so that we can really get some solid input from the community during that. We're continuing to evaluate existing plans. We will continue with the existing conditions inventory, and we are going to track down some information based on what you shared with us today. And we might be reaching out to some of you that had some ideas to make sure that we can get that information. We also, as part of our community engagement, will be looking to schedule stakeholder meetings after the first of the year. So those will be kind of key individuals and or groups, and you've gotten us a good start on that. If you have specific contact information for those individuals that you have identified, that would be really helpful. A telephone number or an email address somewhere that we can try and track them down, that'll be great. And then our virtual public forum. So those are the next steps that we have moving forward. We do have the project website that, as we start you know, getting going, if you will, into the heart of this process, we will continue to update with materials once this group has reviewed them. And so that's really the go-to for the public to be able to stay up to date and to follow along with the process. So that's what we have for this evening. Are there any other last comments or questions or thoughts that you have before we close for the evening? Okay. Well, I want to thank you again. This was helpful for us, and I know I can't wait to go back and look at those saved maps so that we can start to digest some of that information that we learned today. And like I said, keep the ideas and thoughts coming our way. And we probably won't speak to you before the holidays, but enjoy your holidays, and we will be communicating via email over the next few weeks with you.
Thanks very much.
You.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
End meeting.
Whoops.